do you know what kind of learner you are or how you like to learn? Now you might say, Karina, silly question. I've been to school. I know what learning is. But we all have different ways in which we like to process information, and our brains work slightly differently. When we're in a learning phase, we will be thinking of ways in which we can process the information in the best possible way. Now, there are different types of learning preferences, and probably when you were at school, your brain did help you identify what might be some of those preferences for learning and processing that information. Now that you're doing perhaps some learning and you're wanting to perhaps learn a little bit more and develop and grow yourself, if you're looking at videos and you're looking at things online, reading books, it's probably a good idea to check in to figure out, what is my learning preference, and am I learning in accordance with that? Because if you are, it's going to help you be able to process that information and help you learn more quickly and work with your brain rather than trying to work against it as well. So one of the models that you can learn a little bit more about is the VARK learning styles. And the VARK learning styles says that you have 4 main different ways in which you can process and learn information. VARK stands for visual, auditory, read and write, and kinesthetic. So the visual, it's about what you see, auditory, what you hear, read and write, what you read or perhaps write, and the kinesthetic is about doing. So see, hear, read, do. Now, when you better understand how your brain likes to process information, you will know that there are certain types of learning that you'll be more inclined to want to do, and that will help you learn and process that information more quickly. So for example, you might be more of a visual person, so that you like to watch videos or look at graphs or images and colour. Those are the things that help you process and learn information and retain it. You perhaps might be more of an auditory, so you like to hear things. So perhaps you love listening to podcasts or going to lectures or learning from others, talking and telling you a little bit more about the topics that you're wanting to learn about. If you're more of a learning preference for reading and writing, it could be about reading books, looking at texts, and writing and making notes to help you retain the information. And the kinesthetic, it's about doing. So it's about the practical element of getting stuck in and doing and practicing what it is that you're trying to learn about. Now, most of us are a range of those, and we'll have preferences across the board. For example, it's not that great if you can only say, I only learn by visual, because it means that books that might be really useful to you, you won't be processing that information, and you need to be able to move with the different types of learning styles to be able to help you retain and gain more information. So generally, for the most part, we're a mix of all of those learning style preferences, but there might be 1 or 2 which are a little bit more of our preference that we more perhaps lean to. So for example, I'm more a visual and a kinesthetic. So visual for me, I love videos, I love graphs, I love imagery, I love colours. When I was preparing for my exams when I was at school, I was always drawing diagrams and using lots of colour to help me retain that information. The other thing I like to do is the kinesthetic, is just the doing, just getting on with it, practicing, doing the real life application and learning that way with what works or what doesn't. So if you I'm not entirely sure what your learning preferences are, or you want to do a bit of a refresher to check in with that, there is a free online test which I'll provide you with the link for you to be able to go and do that in your own time. But there is a really quick question or quick way in which you can figure out right now, listening to this, as to what you most likely is your learning preference. So imagine you have just bought some flat pack furniture. So say it's a wardrobe, a chest of drawers, or a bed, and it's arrived, you've taken everything out of the box. How do you put it together? So do you look at the instruction manual, and in particular the diagrams, and look at the images and use those to be able to help you work through the steps? Do you read the instructions that are written there on the instruction manual? Do you listen? So perhaps you put a video on of somebody putting together this and you listen to what it is that's being said? Or do you just go, I'm just going to get on with it and just start going? Now, whichever one of those answers that you perhaps are more likely to lean to, that's probably your learning preference style. But I recommend that you do the quiz because that gives you a little bit more detail as to what your preferences are and the range. And it also provides you with some practical tools on how you can work with your learning preference. It's also important though that just having a learning preference doesn't mean that you stick to that only learning style. So as I said, just because you're visual does not mean that you will only absorb information visually. That's not possible in this day and age. You need to be able to flex some of your other learning preferences as well. And it might be that you can take this opportunity to know that perhaps one of your preferences, such as reading and writing, is not your strongest, but you might want to practice doing that more so that you are able to absorb more information when that learning is presented to you as a reading and writing style. So it's important to know how best you learn so that you can be more effective with your time and with you absorbing and processing information. So for example, I know that I'm a more visual and kinesthetic, so I do like to do more of the doing. But if I'm looking at stuff online and I'm trying to learn, videos really useful for me. I normally put my videos on with a caption so that I can read through the captions and listen at the same time. And I normally do it at 1.5 speed as well, so I can go through the information more quickly. Podcasts, I know there's a heap of really good useful podcasts out there. I find those are actually really difficult to absorb the information because for me, listening is not one of my learning preferences. That doesn't mean that I don't listen to podcasts, but I have to sort of think about what is it I'm trying to get in terms of learning and processing information and what might be the best way for that. So your VARK learning preference styles can be really useful to help you understand how you process information so that you can better learn and more quickly learn in a way that suits you and works with your brain.